in Doing Business in Brunei by LiveWIRE, and with us we have a few legal practitioners with us, and they'll interject when necessary, especially when we have the question and answer session. So for the people who it's their first time, so there's a few things that you need to know. So what we'll cover is the contents. I'm going to introduce the series and then the panel, and I'll be talking about process of starting a business, the reforms, business registrations, legal licenses and permits, and at the end a general Q&A, and if anyone wants just chatting around. And so introduction. So the purpose of the whole YouTube live series for this LiveWire YouTube channel is to share a series of entrepreneurship topics. So rather than people just joining our workshops, we people can learn just through the YouTube channel. So the snippets will be used for video content, so people can check it out. And as mentioned, it's actually snippets from the workshops that we've done, and discussions and Q&A between main topics. And anyone else who's watching on the YouTube live, I'm not sure on how many people are on live yet because there's a delay on the YouTube channel. But on average, we get about 10 to 15 live viewers. But regardless, we just continue, and then the content will be viewed some other time. Of course, we'll be editing as necessary. So these are the planned contents. So we've done January, February, and March topics, and this month of April is the legal consultations in doing business in Brunei, and the rest are for the rest of the year. So I'm expecting one topic a month. Originally, I wanted to do one topic a week, but my boss said it's just too much. So just doing just one topic a month. And okay, we have AJ Wong coming in. So hopefully, ngam with the topics and the panel. So just admitting him. Okay, so welcome AJ. We just started the stream. Yeah, that's okay. We'll just continue on. I'm just in the midst of introducing the YouTube series. And I'm actually just on this slide on the general topics that we're gonna talk about. So where I'm gonna share the information that I usually share with our participants, and I would like you guys to just add on any information. Maybe there's an outdated information or yeah, or any misconceptions. So I'm not sure. We actually haven't discussed this thoroughly. So in general, we'll be talking about reforms, registration, licenses, intellectual property, employment, health process, and trading. Okay. Ladies, Noor, second to come in, so might as well. Okay. Anissa? Okay. Thanks. Um, just checking my IT guy is asking our volume is too low. So I'm just double checking on the volume. Uh, is it the volume? Whose voice? Hanisa or Nur? Okay. So just informing Nora, the The tech guy is saying your voice is a bit low, so try to increase your volume later when you speak. Okay. So we'll carry on. Connection issues. I think it's everyone. Okay, so we'll just blame it on you, and then okay, we'll just carry on as we can. Okay, so I'll start it off. So starting with processes, most of these, well, when someone starts a business, it's not that different from when a human being is born. There are registrations and licenses involved. So a human requires a birth certificate and identification card. Although it is possible to live without one, but it's just going to be a hassle for that person. We don't actually need a passport unless we need to travel. Although I'm noticing a few people have started traveling already, so a few people will have to renew their passport. I'm betting in the last 2 years, a lot of people's passport has expired. And on licenses, driving license is only necessary if you're going to drive a car. If you don't have one, there's not much point. And then in certain jobs, you might need some permits to do your jobs, and certification and licenses for other things other than jobs as well. So in business, usually it is, to my understanding, this is required to start a business, sorry, to register a business, especially if the business is gonna operate more than 1 month. Although I noticed that some businesses are not required, especially for the ones like Gerai Ramadan, they only operate within 1 month. So most of the business there are not even registered. Maybe half of it are not registered. And then there's another level of registrations, the Sindiran Bahad. So it's a different registration. And noticing also the word 1617 is not an official name, interestingly. I know in the legal documents I've never seen the word 1617, but somehow it's been named 1617. I don't know if anyone here knows the origins of the 1617. And that's in registration. And in terms of licenses, different businesses require different business licenses. For an example is like if you're in the food industry, you might need the halal license or halal permits. Okay, uh, looking at the business processes, so someone starts off with business idea, they have plans. Sometimes it's l- brief planning or an in-depth plan, and then they get funding, whether it's their own capital, an investor, or family or relative that provides them funding. They register the business, and then they buy the things that they need to start the business, apply the license that's required, recruit the people they need to hire, and then they do the business and as well as marketing. So in most of these steps, if not all, may require some legal considerations. So that's what we're gonna look into today. So these are the topics that we're gonna cover: so general reforms, registrations, business licenses, and other legal matters. Okay, so most of the information, by the way, is actually available online. In general, it used to be business.gov.bn, but once it was absorbed by Ministry of Finance and Economy, it's now business.mofi.gov.bn. So all these reforms are also available online. On the note for the viewers, I put not just a link, but also a QR code where they can also refer to the sources as well. So you don't just take my word for it. There are sources that you can double check for yourself. Okay. I'll try to be quick on this one. So reforms, I remember noticing a lot of reforms starting in 2015. That's when the Brunei economy went a bit down. When it was 2014 when the oil prices went down from 100 plus down to I think it was 30 US dollar per barrel. So the Brunei government decided to make business a lot more easier. So that's when in 2015 there was a lot of reforms. The specific ones was the elimination of miscellaneous license to become business license. This was in 2015. And then finally in that 2015, there was an online registration system where people can actually register online. Previously, it was a tedious process of going to, even before that was the court, and then after that was MOF. People have to go there, register name, and then they had to um, pay, and then a third time when they pick up their certificate. And then there's a few companies act that were changed. Obviously, I don't know much about companies. So companies here and the statute declaration. Again, this is just copy paste. And what I remember as well was for companies, it used to be a percentage of the startup capital, but in 2015 they changed it into $300 flat rate, and that's just for the registration. And finally, there's the record keeping order and bookkeeping introduced. That's what for small businesses, which they are now required to keep track of their finances and send the report to government when they request for it. Of course, this is a problem for most small businesses. Thankfully, it's being enforced only for brick and mortar businesses. The small businesses have yet, to my knowledge, have been asked to provide their uh, record keeping. Um, any information that you want to add on to the 2015 reforms? No. Okay, so straightforward. Okay, thanks. Okay. In 2016, this was actually when DARE was officiated, Darussalam Enterprise. So they introduced a business help desk where people complain, well, they can send in their complaints and they can also ask for, they can inquire how to do certain businesses. So it was a lot easier for people to get more information on how to do a business. So among the complaints, the majority of the complaints I remember was the complaints for lesser nampayan or the miscellaneous license. Apparently government listened to the complaints and they abolished the lesser nampayan. Although despite it was already abolished 2015, people still use the word lesser nampayan. And It was a lot easier for businesses to start their business. I remember that year, that's when Burger King popped up all the other branches in KB and Syria. The moment the business licenses were made easier for people to start their business. But in lieu of that, in exchange of that, is the Health Establishment Act was is it Act or Order? I think there might be an error on that part, where health and beauty establishments are required to register with the government to follow in the guidelines. And then there's also the online system registration for businesses. So previously it was the registration online, but the business license was still the manual method. But this is where they started to allow for online registrations, online applications for the permits for specific businesses. And I remember there was officiated. I think it was in May. So the whole building was already in operations early in the year, January, but the Darussalam Enterprise was only officiated in March. I'm sorry, in May. So while you guys are here, anyone know about the health establishment? I don't know. I remember this was a while back when I did the slides. So I think there might be an error there because I don't think there was an act introduced for a long time already. Oh, yes, I thought so. I thought I corrected this a while back. So apparently, okay. Thank you for that. Anything else to add on this slide? No. Okay. So thank you. I'll correct that slightly later on the order part. Okay. Then 2017, this was a bit of a hoo-ha in 2017. There was the tax rate changes, which I'll show later. Of course, there has been more updates since. More amendments to Companies Act. I don't know the details. And then Halal Certificate and Label Order was amended and enforced starting to 2017. There was even the case where that one person was charged with sedition on complaining about this, and then he left the country. So because of his postings online. But to be honest, it was probably more a misunderstanding on the requirements of the halal certificate and label order. Anything to add on any of the information here? No. Oh, yeah. Oh, there were two.
Interests held by substantial shareholders. So um, I won't go into it in this forum, but
Okay.
there were amendments.
Okay, so there were two
Let's
amendments.
just leave it at
Okay,
that.
well, we don't have to go into details. So I'm not sure about the viewers. If any viewers would like to share whether the business are whether the registered as a company or just a sole proprietor, just share in the chat. Okay. Okay. So 2018 and 19, there's not a lot of changes, but there were a few things discussed. Oops. How did it go? Next slide. Oops. Okay. Okay. Like my computer is lagging a bit. Okay. So there was Youth Entrepreneurship Ecosystem published, and then there introduced a co-matching grant. Basically, it was $10,000 grant maximum, but its co-matching is 30/70. So that means 30% is your own capital and 70% is provided by their, of course, terms and conditions applies. And then 2020, as most people know, COVID happened. So there was a lot of changes, a lot of legal enforcement of certain things that, in some cases, made a lot of businesses harder, and in some cases easier. So the main effect was because due to social distancing, a lot of businesses were forced to close, such as gyms, and um, yeah, and some restaurants didn't weren't able to go full capacity because they can only do takeaways, no dine-ins. But the government also tried to make it easier. So there was a financial assistance provided to MSMEs through the SKN, Scheme Kebajikan Negara. So the first wave, a lot of people got a few benefits, but the recent wave, I know some people tried and they didn't get any assistance. So I think there was the issue of budget. And commenting grant was revised, as mentioned, the $10,000 one. Now it was updated to $20,000 for business who want to expand sorry, not extend, expand. And very recently, so 2021 and now 2022, the online registration and online licenses, I think is in under one roof, under one website. So it's now under one common portal, ocp.mofi.gov.bn. And we've already initiated with His Majesty's consent on the endemic phase. So hopefully, with that, we'll be able to recover the economy, and a few businesses will be able to run more smoothly. Although I've noticed a few businesses actually have shut down, so a lot of empty commercial buildings now. Okay, those were the reforms. I think I forgot to put a question on that part. Just checking on chat if anyone have any questions on the business reforms. So checking. Okay, so just noticing that there's about a minute delay in the live wire streams. So sometimes Anyone have any questions? Okay, so we'll just continue on. So business registration. So I'll be expecting a few more inputs from you guys on this part. So again, any information can be obtained from ocp.mofi.gov.bn on all the processes. So for the viewers, they can either just type in ocp.mofi.gov.bn or they can scan the QR code to access the website. So in not just registration but also guidelines on registering their businesses. Okay, so it's just copy pasted from the website. So in registering, they log into the account, sorry, to the system, and then register their business or incorporate a company. And on this part, I like to highlight a lot of people when they started off, they have that confusion between business name and incorporate a company. So registered business is the small type business, the 1617, while the incorporate company is the big business, the Sindran Berhad. So so just a reminder, don't be confused. If you want a Sindran Berhad, then go for a company. But if you just want to register a normal type business, then the business name registration is the process that you want to go for. So uh, uh, they will there's the form where you can check whether the business name exists or not. So if it has existed, then you can't take it. So it's like getting an email. So you can't just take someone else's email address. So you have to register for a new one for with a new name. And interestingly, now we can pay online, and you if there was no issues or there's no extra licenses required, the business in general uh, will be able to have a certificate of business name registration within 24 hours. The quickest I've ever heard was they registered in the morning and they got it in the afternoon. And the final step there is TAP. So we'll talk briefly about TAP later. In general, local employees need to be paid their TAP. So it used to be separate, but now it's automatic. Once you register a company, then you also registered with TAP. So okay, so about the business names, you can actually see the guidelines on what to do and what not to do in registering a business name. So, if in general, it's just normal names are allowed. I think the best ones that I should read is on the right. So we can't just use any words. We can't use the word royal diraja or anything to do with royalty without His Majesty's consent. And also the words Brunei, cooperative savings or trustee is not allowed unless you are registering in under those well I guess jurisdiction or whatever you want to call it. So especially Brunei, but find it interesting. The old companies have the word Brunei. I think it wasn't enforced a long time ago. At what point I don't know why we're not allowed now with the word Brunei. Um, so is there any specific advices on choosing a name for people's businesses other than that was provided here?
I suppose what can be helpful as well when um, choosing a name is to do a quick search first to see if there are any other names already registered. And it doesn't cost you anything to do that, and you can just see right off the bat whether there's any similar names. I guess that would be my main tip.
Interestingly, I've noticed a few people have similar names, but they were still allowed to register. A simple example is one of my father's company's name was Syarikat Hidayah, but uh, I've noticed a few people use the word Hidayah still, but they add like Sri Hidayah, Nur Hidayah. So apparently that's allowed. Okay.
Yeah, I think the registry is only concerned with absolutely identical names.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really concerned whether you want to register a name with a very similar sounding word to another business
Okay.
that I think might come under, intellectual property or,
Oh,
trademarking.
yes, trademarking.
And there might be like commercial reasons why you wouldn't want to do that. Or maybe there are commercial reasons why you do want to do that because, you want your nasi katok business to sound like nasi
Oh,
katok mama or kaka or, you want to sort of ride off of that. So kind of depends on what your intentions are.
okay, thanks. Okay, so that's on choosing a name. Okay, we'll look into more deep on the registration. So we'll be looking briefly on the sole proprietor, partnership, and Sinden Berhad. This is just copy pasted from the government website on the difference between sole proprietor, partnership, and company. What I find interesting is both sole proprietorship and partnership is registered under 1617, or more legally, name is the business name registration. Um, so it's not a separate registration; it's a similar registration. The only difference is there's two names in that one company. While a company is a Senin Bahat with at least two people, but if it's more than 50 people, then it's a public limited company. So there's a difference between private limited and a public limited. Another difference is on the legal status. So interestingly, what I understand is if the business goes bankrupt, for the sole proprietor and the partnership, the individual is also liable. While if it's on a company or Sendirian Bahad, it's a limited liability. Hence the name private limited to its private shares. Uh, of course, there are reasons why one would want to register for sole proprietor or a company. Yeah? But I think most people would just want to register a sole proprietorship. So it's just a $30 registration fee. But for family businesses, I think it's recommended to register as a partnership. This is what happened with my mother's business. She wanted me to take over the business, so she put my name inside the partnership. So the in that one company is my mother's name and my name. Although there was that one company Sinden Bahat that was also registered with my name, so I'm just a signatory. It's my mother's business. I haven't taken over that business yet. Uh, so um, what do I have here? Okay, so that's the general information on the sole proprietor, partnership, and company. Is there any information here that is not stated here that you guys want to share?
Well, okay, I can not debunk, I can demystify the 1617.
Oh yeah, yes. Hilang. Is it atau did Nor get disconnected? Okay. So I think Nor is frozen, or is the connection with Nor is frozen. So anyone wanna take over on the demystifying 1617, or is it my connection?
I don't hear from Noor either, but not meaning to steal her thunder here, but she can hear me. I'm not sure. I don't have Hanisa or Noor's streams on my screen.
Okay. Yeah, I also don't hear her. I think there might be a
Oh,
connection issue.
hi,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
back.
Hi. Yeah.
I think that was my Wi-Fi. I'm on my mobile hotspot now, so hopefully
Oops. Okay.
that'll be better. Is it just me? Does everyone have their cameras off?
No, it's probably
No,
you.
I have.
Okay, it's just me then. So yes, on the 1617, it's called 1617 because when you register, you'll get two forms, and it's called Form 16, and Form 17, and that contains the information for your business registration. I think one should have the name of the sole proprietor or the partners, and the other one is like your certificate to say that this is a registered business.
Okay. So it's borang 16-17. Yeah, so form 16 for
Yes.
17. So
Yeah.
it's, but
Yeah.
now it's online. I don't know if it's still two pieces of paper or documents.
I think it would
Yeah.
still be two separate files, I guess.
Yeah, the extracts don't say 16 or 17 anymore.
Ah,
So they just when you do a search for a business, it just comes out as it's like an extract from the ROC, and it just says the name of the business and the as a sole proprietor. So I think that's why, because I had a conversation with a junior lawyer the other day, and they had no idea what a 1617 is, because now all the business searches are done online and they've never seen 1617. So they're like, why are you asking for what is 1617?
so that's
Showing my
just
age.
something specific for Brunei. So if you ask in Malaysia, Singapore, or US, they have no idea.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Okay, so that's something interesting. I thought it would be applicable in Malaysia or something, but apparently it's not. Plus, it's already so outdated because as you mentioned, the documents don't even have the 1617 anymore. Okay, thank you for the additional information. Okay, so moving on. So in general, the reasons for registering a sole proprietor is just to be legal. So then people can apply for licenses or apply for tenders or simply just opening up a bank account. Because without a business name registration, you can't open up a bank account under the company name. For partnership, is usually for people to include partners and family, and also to increase their credibility through the partner's reputation. And Sinan Bahat, interestingly, is mostly about the limiting the liabilities. So as mentioned, the liabilities is separate from the company and the individual. Although I think the individual will still be liable if they use the guarantors or they're using their own collateral for the business. But the business in itself will be separate from the individual. And I noticed, of course, real estate companies are registered as Sdn Bhd. Apparently, it's to purchase land or property under the company name, and also partnering with investors, usually more wiser or smarter investors, that they want the company to be registered as a private limited. And I noticed as well the fast food restaurants, KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, Pizza, they're all actually registered as Sdn Bhd. So most of the franchises are apparently required to register as a Sdn Bhd. Is it a must, or is it just an agreement with the franchisee? Anyone have experience with franchise companies? Oh, now AJ is gone. Okay.
It may
Hello? Sorry.
So, sorry, my question was, is it a legal requirement for franchise to register Sdn Bhd, or is it just a franchisor requirement?
I think that would depend on the contract that you have
Okay,
and how you contract.
okay, okay. So moving on. So here's something those usually what I've experienced when people are doing businesses with partners is they create a partnership agreement. So usually the contents is nature of business, profit and loss sharing, designated responsibilities, and terms to change or to be withdrawn from the business. Uh, Interestingly, what I've noticed is most of the dealings that I've had with or people I help out with, they usually just use templates online and that's just edit it. But what's your take on this, on partnership agreements?
I mean, of course, we're going to say that you should consult a
Of
lawyer
course.
to avoid headaches further down the line. And it can be as simple or as detailed as you want it. But, I do think that it's important to get some form of legal advice before you enter into partnership with somebody. And also, I mean, I agree, you can find a lot of templates online. But each country has its own peculiarities. A lot of what you find online are usually probably US partnership agreements, and some things might not be relevant here, and people might not know what to remove or add and things like that. So always consult a lawyer.
Definitely agree with Noor on that. I think one thing that people don't realize with partnerships is that there's often the need for a lot of detail because of unique aspects of your partnership, like maybe the type of business that you do, the type of assets that you hold, and then sometimes there's also informal arrangements between partners that isn't reflected in writing, but really does need to be captured in a partnership agreement. For example, like partners who don't have a very formal sort of financial structure. Maybe one partner is holding all of the money for the business, things like this. I mean, these are the things that really need to be hashed out and discussed, and put into writing. So that even in the event there is a dispute, everything's already sort of, well, as best as possible already in writing.
Following on that, how substantial is it to use an informal or non-consulted partnership agreement in taking legal action? For example, like a few people I've helped out with had complaints where they had grouped up with a few friends, and then suddenly that one person who's holding the money decided to go into a different direction. So without the legal document, a document without using a lawyer versus a document that was, drafted by a lawyer. So what are the chances of them taking legal action?
When you say what are the chances of them taking legal action, do you mean in a situation where you don't have an informal partnership agreement? I mean, the thing is in Brunei, like I think most other Commonwealth countries, not having a written agreement doesn't mean you don't have a contract.
Oh.
It just means so you can have a verbal agreement with someone. You could have a verbal partnership agreement with someone, but it becomes very difficult in terms of a dispute and in terms of evidence when you want to prove certain when you say that there are certain terms or certain conditions in that agreement. So you then have to rely on other evidences that you can churn up. For example, the way certain business dealings were done, the way certain maybe there were communications that confirm the condition or term that you're trying to rely on. Things like this. It becomes much more difficult, I think, to resolve a dispute when there is a simple verbal agreement between parties. I think you may have mentioned that you may have asked whether it's common. I forgive me if that's wrong, but I think it is quite common, especially in Brunei, and I think in throughout the world generally. A lot of people do enter into informal verbal arrangements with others based on trust.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good, when your friends, when everything's working well, then it works well. But it's when things don't go well, that's when you really regret not having things in writing.
Yeah. So another issue I've noticed is when people they verbally agree on a profit sharing structure, and then suddenly when the business is very profitable and they see that their share is too low, then they'll have a dispute. So it's going to be difficult for them to carry on with the partnership without that agreement. So again, the highlight is best to consult a lawyer. Okay. So next we have so advantages and disadvantages. So general outline on advantages and disadvantages. So I know that in general there's no income tax for now in Brunei for sole proprietor and partnership. I don't know if Brunei government will change that anytime soon. I'm very well aware in other countries they are also charge well they also pay for their taxes. But in Brunei we're lucky, so there's no taxes. So it's cheaper to start, but with partnership you'll have more people working together. But in Sdn and Berhad, it's mostly because of limiting the liabilities. And although there's the disadvantages, the sole proprietor has personal liability. So again, if the company bankrupts, then the individual is also bankrupt. And in the case of partnership, it's not just one person; it's more than one person. And Sdn Bhad is in general is expensive to set up. So in general, its registration is $300. And there's also a profit tax if the gross sales exceeds $1 million. So I'm curious on the registration. I know a while back that registering Sdn Bhad used to require a lawyer or an accountant, but I've heard people share that they tried it, they registered it themselves. So is a lawyer no longer required? What's your take on that?
Sorry, was this for incorporating a company?
Yeah, a company as Sdn Bhad. So
Oh,
I've heard people
okay.
registering without a lawyer. So apparently the online process has allowed people to register a Sdn Bhad themselves. Even for the memorandum of articles of association, there's a template provided on the government website, so people can just use that and then again copy paste edit and just register themselves. So do you have more information on that?
Yes, I looked this up just now because I got agitated when I
Okay,
saw that.
sorry.
Um, no, well, I think, it kind of goes back to, okay, the quick answer to the question is nowadays you don't need to use a lawyer to incorporate your own company. You can't do it for other people,
uh,
mind you, but you can do
okay.
it for your own company. And this wasn't always the case. I think before 2010, you would have to use a lawyer because you would need them to draft the objects that are in the Memorandum of Association. And the Memorandum of Association used to be quite a detailed document which states basically the powers of the company, what the company can do, what its purpose is. And the legal consequences of that is that if the company tried to do something that wasn't within its powers, then it would be invalid.
Ooh, okay.
So that's why you would need a lawyer to draft it out for you, because then we would make sure that it's got everything that you need. But in the 2010 amendments to the Companies Act, they basically kind of done away with this. So there's a section now in the Companies Act which says that just because a company in its objects doesn't have the power to do something, the act isn't invalid anymore. So it's part of, I think it's part of Brunei's, ease of doing business. What's it? Objectives. So they made it a lot simpler, and there's a template that people can use now on their website.
Okay, so it is possible, but I'm betting that if they did it wrongly, then I've heard also cases where they did it wrongly and their application was denied, so they had to do it all over again. So probably you should still hire a lawyer to do it.
Yes, of course.
Okay. So we've actually already talked about limited companies, but I think is just sharing on the examples of limited companies. So interestingly, LiveWire is actually registered as a Sdn Bhad, but that's mostly because we're sponsored by Shell, and Shell does require a certain level of accountability. So they need to see the cash in, cash out. Car companies, they usually register as Sdn Bhad because they deal a lot with debt, because when they purchase cars overseas, they're actually using debt. So it's just to protect themselves. Now on the public limited companies part, I have been trying to find out, but to my knowledge, in Brunei, there's only one public limited company. I thought Telbru used to be one. I thought, but I looked it up. It's no longer public limited. To my knowledge, to what I've searched. So for now, I know BIBD. But of course, internationally, we've heard of Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Facebook, and so on. So, do you know if there's any other public limited companies in Brunei?
No, I don't think there is. And of course, Telbrew is no more.
Yes, it's now
Yeah.
Imagine, but I think that's a Imagine Sindan Berhad, not a Berhad anymore.
It would
So
be the
yeah.
I was Baiduri Bank is a Berhad.
Oh, Baiduri is Berhad.
I
Oh, okay.
yes.
Okay. So, to my knowledge, in in international areas, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and so on, you can actually buy their shares. But in Brunei, I don't know where you can buy the shares in Brunei because there's no stock market in Brunei. So, how would you go about and buy shares from these local public limited companies?
You can't. You have to
Yeah.
wait till the stock
I think it's just
exchange.
around it. Yeah, done. So they have to be listed. They have to be listed in an exchange for you to purchase them.
Yeah, but there's no exchange in Brunei, so I
Right.
don't know.
Not yet, not yet. There's
Okay.
supposed to
Yeah.
be one soon.
Yeah, I think that's been like what for the last 5 years now or more, but that hasn't happened yet. But hopefully that's gonna be a thing, maybe. Maybe that'll help out more companies to expand. So okay, we already covered this, the Mathematical Association. Previously I know it takes 1 to 2 months. That's what I've heard. But any of you can update how long? Maybe it's faster now. Like 16, 17 used to take like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but now it's just one day. But limited companies, is it any faster now, or is it still 1 to 2 months?
It's much faster now. It's similar. I would say the timeline is quite similar to the 16, 17
Oh,
business registrations. Mhm.
okay. So the potential one day.
I have had incorporations where it's just one day. I mean, if all your documents are in order, then you can get it in 1 to 2 days or less than a week.
Okay, less than a week. Okay, still faster than 2 months. Okay, so that's still better. Okay, so I'll update that slide later. And on cooperatives, any one of you familiar with cooperatives? That I can ask for more information on cooperatives. So usually um, it's these companies. I think most of them actually register. Not register, they operate usually fuel stations. Most of them. But the registration is different from 1617 Australian Bahad. But it used to be under BINA, which was used to be under MPRT or MIPR, but now it's under MOF as well. So registration, I don't know what's the update on the registration. I actually tried to help out with the registration of a cooperative in 2012, but at that point it froze registrations for whatever reason. So I think I'm just gonna skip through because to be honest, it's difficult to register for a cooperative society based on my personal experience. So I don't recommend anyone to start one unless you have like a whole bunch of people who wants to really start one because all those cooperatives are actually quite profitable. But the problem is it's usually one whole village that has to cooperate together. The best example I see is Tasamul or the Lumapas cooperative. Before the bridge opened, it was easier for it wasn't that easy for people to buy fuel and groceries and stuff. So that's why the cooperative started those businesses there. But I don't see how it's different from Sindan Bahat, other than it's not tax, and of course the registration is difficult. So just gonna skip through that. Okay, so just checking on the chat. What I can see in my chat is only 7 right now, but there's no questions from chat. But while we're waiting for any questions, any one of you want to add anything on the business registration side? Maybe there's something else that you missed out that you wanna share now. Okay, none. Okay. Oh, is Hanisa okay? Her camera is down. Okay. We'll just continue on. So business licenses. So different businesses require different licenses. Not much different from a driving license. So driving license for a car is different from a motorcycle. But then there are vehicles that do not require a driving license. Example is a bicycle. So that was one of the changes in 2015. I think it was in 2016 that certain businesses did not, they no longer require licenses. Although this was 2015-16, a few changes have happened ever since that. So in here, again, the business document is on the bottom there, the link for this information. So businesses like bakeries, hawkers, food stalls, motor vehicle dealers, gas stations, retail stores, timber stores, and workshops are no, they no longer require licenses. But I'm very sure a few changes have happened since. For example, as mentioned before, 2017, despite not requiring business licenses for bakery or food establishments, now there is a requirement for halal permits or halal licenses. So I'm not sure about the others. Do you guys have any update on any of these businesses that supposedly no longer require a business license? I think someone
No, I don't think there's been any.
think 2 years ago, I think I noticed workshops, despite not requiring business license, they do require staff to be certified. So that's one I can remember. In retail stores, they no longer require lesson nampayan, but they when they sell food from the public, like people who wanna sell food, those the food that from other vendors, they do require halal certification or at least letter from the halal department. So I'm not sure on the updates here. And now on the establishment for the health and beauty, unfortunately this slide is in Malay because I found the slides in Malay. I couldn't find the English one. Also on that note, I couldn't find the link doesn't work anymore. So although I did download the PowerPoint file. So this was after the businesses that no longer require licenses. They also introduced this order, perintah order. Certain businesses require registering the EKK, the health and beauty establishment. Um, have any of you had experience in helping a company register for the EKK? No? Okay. I think it's just simple businesses, but I think among the requirements is like for saloons and massage and reflexology. They don't allow for men with women or vice versa. They only allow for men with men and women with women. I think this is why there's no longer unisex saloons. Yeah. Uh, Also, yeah, okay. So this is an interesting slide. This used to be more simpler. This was I think first time I saw this slide was in 2006, but ever since then there's a lot of changes. So uh, for certain businesses require certain licenses. So, for example, concerts and public entertainment, they require permit from the Home Affairs, but of course terms and condition applies. I think this is why we don't have any more concerts in Brunei. I don't know what was the last concert. Was it Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, like what 90s in the 2000s? Also, there's a blackout period, Rajab, Sha'ban, Ramadan. They don't allow. But I think if you want to, you'll have to do it in a closed space. Unfortunately, yeah. I think that's unfortunate for places like JPC, JPMC, Jurong Park Amphitheater. So it's not as used as it should be anymore. Interestingly, expos and bazaars used to be under Home Affairs, but at some point it was taken over by PMO under the Ministry of Energy. But I'm not sure if this is still the case because industry has been taken over um, by Mofi at some point. I don't have any update on this one. Ministry of Development, if you are to do a construction company, whether it's building a building or constructing a building or maintaining a building, you need a license. And then childcare centers, interestingly, is under Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports. Customs and Excise, anything to do with shipping. Ministry of Primary Resources and Tourism, anything to do with tourism, tour guides and homestay. Anything to do with info communication is under AITI. Municipal boards, management of car parks, Ministry of Finance. Although I think I probably should add what's now the Central Bank of Brunei Darussalam. So it's either MI or the central bank. If you want to start up a bank or a securities company or a money changer or remittance. Although I'm not sure how money changer businesses are doing during this COVID times. Department of Land Transport, if you're importing cars, interestingly, they don't control the accessories of cars, so that kind of allows for illegal customizations. And then this was updated recently because to my knowledge before, legal firms required from AGC, but I was corrected. It's now from the courts. So allow to start a legal firm. So even if you did if you guys did graduate in law, you're not allowed to practice law unless you have the license or permit to run a legal firm. And then Ministry of Health. Used to be just private clinics and pharmaceuticals, but a few years back, cosmetics was involved because of the fake goods which were harmful for the skin. And Ministry of Education covers on schools, including private schools, private institutions, except for, interestingly, Ugama School and Ugama School and driving schools. So driving school is under JPD, Ugama School is under the religious affairs. So is there anything you guys would like to update on the specific licenses and approval?
Yeah, actually, under if you're in the business of importing food, for
Mhm.
example, you actually need approvals from Ministry of Health as well.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's also covered later in the trading across borders. But this is just simple list of special licenses. And I think half of this is actually able to be registered on the OCP website now. Well, half. I don't think you can register a legal firm online yet. Do you guys have an online registration, or is it just a still manual registration at the courts?
Actually, well, for legal firms, they're usually sole proprietorships or partnerships.
Mm.
So it's 1617 as well.
Ah,
But what they will do is they need to see that the individuals that are registering the business have the practicing certificate from court that
practicing
shows
certificate.
that you are a qualified person.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Next, so a bit more detail. Any more legal licenses required? Information. Of course, you can consult a lawyer, or you can also use the business simulator on the business.mofi.gov.bn website. So there's a list of businesses on the simulator, and then it will inform the licenses that you require in order to start and run those businesses. So it takes a while to play around with the simulator to get through the requirements. But of course, kalau if you're too lazy or if you want to be efficient, then ask a lawyer. Okay. So that's on business licenses, on general business licenses. So I'm just checking on chat. Seriously, no involvement in chat. Okay, that's okay. We just carry on again for people who wanna watch this in the future. So, intellectual property. Okay, so we used to invite Brew IPO for some of our workshops in LiveWire, so they usually share these information. But I just summarize it into one slide. But later, either Hanisa or Noor can share more on the details. And so these are the common type of intellectual property rights, and most people have the misunderstanding or the misconception of copyright as being the umbrella term when it's in fact intellectual property is the umbrella term. Trademark is usually the logo. Industrial design is the shape of the product, usually for mass-produced products like chairs, bottles, or even laptops or mobile phones. Copyright is usually published works, whether it's pictures, audio, books, or movies, and patent is usually an invention. Although interestingly, I find that there's also like software invention. To my understanding, it should be also under copyright, but apparently some programming or some codes are under patents. On this part, Hanisa, can you do you wanna share more on intellectual property rights because you added a few slides? Is Hanisa here? Is she disconnected? Okay, so maybe Noor. Okay, so
Hanisa, where are you?
okay, just sharing the slide that Hanisa sent to me. So sorry, computer lagging. Okay, so these were details on the difference between trademark, copyright, industrial designs, and patents.
Mhm.
Um,
I think she's summarized quite well here, just the differences. As you can see, the characteristics, what makes a particular intellectual property right, that right, how long it is, it's different for each type of IP. I'm not really sure what she wanted to, to say, but maybe I can highlight. You said that nowadays that there are certain types of software that can be patented as well,
yes.
and that's because if you see under characteristics of patent, if it fulfills these requirements, if it's new, it has an inventive step, and it has capable of industrial use, then you can patent something. So it's not really limited to
Like hardware.
physical hardware. You can patent software these days as well.
Yeah. I think I noticed when someone loads up Adobe Photoshop, so there's also patent information there. So apparently, big companies like Adobe patent their software. I don't see that a lot, but there are a few patents.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot, but there are some. And I suppose once technology advances even more, you might see more in the future as well. I think the important thing with IP rights as well to recognize is that it's applicable only to the country that it's registered for most IP rights. So your trademark, your industrial design, your patent. If you want it to be protected in Brunei, then you have to register it in Brunei. But registering it in Brunei doesn't necessarily mean that it will be protected in the same way in Singapore or Malaysia. So you have to go there and register as well. If your business is becoming big enough to do that, then you should do that.
I know for most Bruneians, they don't really care much about intellectual property. Either they're not educated or informed, or they don't care. But the simplest one I can see is like trademark is simply their logo. I know a lot of companies they have their own logo, but they don't trademark it. Another is copyright. Some tuition schools produce their own notes, but they don't actually have to register right for copyright. But yeah,
Copyright doesn't need to be registered.
but if someone else uses their notes, they actually have the right to report. I'm not sure how that works. I know when there was the Malaysian music industry, they came to Brunei and they made a report, and then suddenly there was a crackdown on the pirated movies and music. How does that work? How does someone take legal action for their copyright?
Oh, how do they start the legal process? Well, go see a lawyer.
People answer.
No, okay. Let's take an example. Okay, so what IP rights gives you as an IP right owner is the freedom and the right to use the work that you've created exclusively to the exclusion of everybody else. And if someone uses it, especially to in a commercial sense, then you have the right to stop them from doing so. And hi, Hanisa, you're back.
Sorry about that.
So Bobby was asking, how would you enforce your IP rights? For example, copyright. Start the legal process.
Yeah, her answer was consult a lawyer.
One of the things that you need to, one is you need to find that there is actually a breach.
Yeah.
Two, then you usually my suggestion would be to try to speak with the other person and then negotiate how to proceed forward. But in the event that that doesn't work, then you might want to proceed with legal proceedings. Or as people might know, copyright breaches are also criminal offenses. So they may be they may be more inclined to actually proceed with making a police report on those breaches.
So
Yeah,
an
that's
example
exactly.
I shared was in case in Brunei, what I've heard is there was a tuition school. They created their own notes, and then they found out another school was using the same photocopy notes. So they could have just, well, as you said, mentioned, the first step is to actually confront them, I guess nicely, and then second one is if they still don't care, then you can do a police report. No, at what point do we consult a lawyer?
Well, okay, I suppose, as a first step, I mean, most people would just tell them to stop using their notes. And you can do that with or without a lawyer. But
But it's just easier.
I mean, you would only really need a lawyer, I suppose, if you wanted to go ahead and sue them for
Ooh.
damages, if you feel like it's affected your business, something like that, then and you want to take them to court to sue them for it, then yes, that's when you would definitely need a lawyer. But before that, like Hanisa said, you can always approach them first on your own and tell them to stop using it. You can approach the police and those kinds of things.
Ooh. Someone just asked in chat, what's the difference between TM and R? I'm guessing that's under trademark. So Hanisa, can you answer?
When it comes to TM, that's on trademark itself, aka the sign combination. Or nor if I may just inquire, is this on related rights?
No, I think R isn't
Registered.
really necessary. It means that the trademark is registered. And that's usually to give notice to people that this is a registered trademark. It's used interchangeably, whether you use TM or R, that's up to the trademark owner, but there's no requirement in our law in Brunei for you to put the TM or R sign. Some other countries have it as a requirement, but we don't.
So I don't know, in my head it's like if R means registered, that means if I haven't registered, I can just use the TM? Is that the case?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh wow, okay. So even if I don't register, I can just use the TM. So you have to be registered. So registered is when you use the R. Okay. So starting from now, you'll see more logos having the TM.
I suppose. I mean, it's just the thing is, if you are saying something is your trademark, I think, I don't know, Hanisa, if you can correct me on this. I feel like there is something that says that you can't represent something as registered if it's not. So you have to be careful with it.
Okay, just to be safe, just don't use it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope that answers Nick creates a question.
But I something that should be pressed is the fact that when you register something, you do have the exclusive legal right over the mark, the industrial design, the patent. But if it's not registered, you aren't very much protected when it comes to the legalities. Then there are certain actions that you have to do to actually fight and then say, no, this is my trademark, and then you registered it, notwithstanding the fact that it's mine. So rather than go through that trouble, we would always suggest to just register any and all IP if registration is available.
Okay. What's the costing for registering any of these? I think trademark is I remember it was 150. Has it changed?
150 per class.
Per class. What do you mean per class?
When it comes to trademark, we follow the NIST classification, and it provides like a list of goods and services that will be provided under each trademark. When you register a trademark, you're registering it under a certain class, aka you're registering it for a specific purpose. Like for us, legal services, it's under class 485, so we will register our trademark under class 485. If you register a trademark, it doesn't mean that it's gonna be for all goods and services, unless you want to register it for all goods and services, but cost is high. But you will usually just register it for the goods and services pertaining to the product that you're putting out.
On that note, I'm just realizing McDonald's, the logo is trademark and the products are also trademark. The Big
Yeah.
Mac, the all those other products. So
The golden arches are trademarked. The name McFlurry is trademarked.
yeah, McFlurry, yeah.
There's a lot of different products internally so that people don't use it outside of McDonald's, that they would prefer to have trademark.
Okay. Is there any penalties? Or is it if you're asking how does it is there any penalty for using someone else's trademark, or is it dependent on the complainer, the complaint? And she's gone.
Okay, I'll try and answer that. I think if you're talking about penalties, I think it's worth remembering that I think, again, if I'm not mistaken, I'm a bit rusty in this area. Trademark offenses can be criminal offenses as well. So I guess, when you want to talk about penalties, it could be, do you mean penalties if, I guess, someone's suing you? There's no automatic penalties as such just by using it. But, when you use it, there will be, I guess, consequences. So the consequences could be the trademark owner sends you a cease or desist letter, or asks you to repay back any damages or compensation that was caused by the unauthorized use of their trademark, things like that. Hanisa, are trademark offenses criminal offenses as well? Or is it just copyright? There's some that are, right?
There are some that are. Trademark, under WIPO it is, but I'm not sure if we would consider it as for copyright, yes.
Okay. Last question on this for my part. I understand Disney tend to extend their intellectual property way beyond the time period. So how long can someone extend their IP?
With respect to trademark, it's renewable as long as you pay the appropriate fees.
Oh wow!
So it's every 10 years. You just have to remember to renew it every year. If you forget and then you lapse, they give you a leeway of 6 months to after it's expired to actually renew. So that one will be forever as long as you remember to make the necessary application and pay.
Yeah, and corporations tend to be forever, so that'll be forever. Okay, thanks. So I think there's another slide that you shared. Okay. So these are the processes. Can you share on this slide?
It's just the basic application process. For trademark, industrial design, and patents, it's quite the same, I guess, journey. First, you need to submit the necessary application form and pay the requisite fee to BruIPO. They'll do the necessary examination, they'll publish it, they'll issue you a certificate, and then they'll publish it in the journal. In the event that there is, this will be basically the way to go if you have all of your papers ready. If there is no issues whatsoever, it's the straight way. But if there's any issues in between, aka, okay, if you're filing in a trademark and then it's a trademark that has a general word in it. So BruIPO would usually just issue you a letter and then asking you, okay, do you want to confirm this? Are you asking for exclusive use, or can you provide a disclaimer? And they will assist you all of the way. But it's the general way of how application process would be: application, examination, publication, issuance of certificate or letters of grant, and then journal entry.
Okay. So these are all processes available to BruIPO.
The local registrations, yes.
Okay. But if we want to like expand outside of Brunei, then we'll probably have to register with their intellectual property office, or can
Not
BruIPO register?
The trade for all of this, trademark, industrial designs, even patents. Trademarks, industrial designs, and patents. It is territorial. So, like for trademark, if you want to register it internationally, we don't have a worldwide system per se, but what Brunei has is the Madrid system, which allows you to register to the countries which are registrants of the Madrid system. Even in designs, you have the forgot the name, apologies. There is a system that allows you to register it to different countries. Even patents, you have the Patent Cooperation Treaty, Hague system for
Hague.
design.
Okay.
Yeah, system. Patents, you also have that. And all of these systems, you can either trademark and patents, you need to do it via BruIPO, preferably. Industrial designs, you can use the Hague system. For copyright, as long as it's a valid copyright, the validity extends to all the countries that's a member party to the World Trade Organization. That one you don't have to worry about. But trademark, industrial designs, patents, it's a consideration for you to have if you want to export your products.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So these are the examples that you shared. Okay. Want to share on your examples?
These are the examples of those that has been registered. You can see, like for trademark KFC, it's very it's something that people would know. Okay, it's Kentucky Fried Chicken. You have Starbucks, Shell, LiveWIRE. It's also registered. And then you have for Badanan Taib, and these are them trying to differentiate. Okay, these are our goods and services, and this is our logo. For industrial designs, just to differentiate, the industrial designs is very much on the appearance of a product. So you can see what has been registered. The bottles, the appearance of a car, these have been successfully registered. And then for the patents itself, what I've seen is chemical composition of vaccines. We have the registration of Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and then even the inventions of systems, methods, and apparatus to do something. So you can see differences on the registration, what can be registered. And it's available at BruIPO when you do the searches, and then you can see what has been registered.
It's interesting that you shared on the appearance of bottles. So I noticed the sushi bottles, sehat bottles, and fresh bottles, they all look different. Apparently it's necessary if you're creating a product to register the industrial design.
It's up to you if you want to. Then you'll get like some protection, but you may want to differentiate your products from others. That's a business consideration. if you want to just differentiate your products to other companies.
Okay. Okay. So I think that's it on the intellectual property. Just checking on the questions. No new questions. Okay, we'll move on. So okay, next one is finding employees. So if you wanna look for local workers is from jobcenterbrunei.gov.bn. Of course, so job seekers usually use this, but as an employer, we can use this to post jobs. And once we hire a local employee, then we're supposed to pay off their TAP and SCP, and there's a requirement for contract of service. So again, some of this info is from the link below. If I forgot to put a QR code for that link. So um, I find it interesting that most of the employment in Brunei doesn't have employees in Brunei don't have a contract. Is that a legal requirement? Does anyone can anyone here share more on the labor laws in Brunei?
Well, actually, it is a legal requirement under the Employment Order 2009 that the vast majority of well, the vast majority of jobs are covered by the Employment Order 2009, except those with the exception of those in executive, confidential, managerial positions. So the Employment Order 2009 tend to regulate the sort of the like, for example, the service industry, retail workers, waiters, basically I think non-management or non-executive positions will be covered by that. So actually, yeah, most people should have a contract. It's just that the contract might be prescribed by the Employment Order 2009, or it might not be.
Okay. On the Job Center Brunei, the website, I still see vacancies posted on like Facebook groups and whatnot. So is it a requirement for employers to have to advertise on Job Center, or employers can just use any media as necessary? So
I'm not sure if there's any uh, government directive that companies have to try and source from Job Center first. But I think there is definitely a push. I mean, someone can please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but but there's definitely a government initiative to try and have everyone use Job Center, because then it makes it, well, centralizing the job searching is generally a good idea, right? For both businesses and employees. Because otherwise it's difficult to know if there are people looking for the vacancy that you have, and vice versa. If you're a job seeker, you don't know what vacancies there are. So if you have a central portal like Job Center, then of course it's generally better for everyone.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on to that as well, because I mean I think it's not prescribed in any law, I think, but there is definitely an initiative, a push for employers to be registered and use Job Center, especially if I think if you're considering if you need to hire foreign employees,
yeah.
then you need certain clearances from Job Center now before they'll give you the permit and approval, things like that.
So that's the next topic. So foreign workers. So of course during COVID times with all the movement restriction, the travel restrictions, it's difficult to get foreign workers now. If you are able to, it's going to be super expensive nowadays. But as you mentioned, yes. In order to get foreign employees, we have to apply. We have to advertise for local employment first. So we're prioritizing local employment. But if no one applies, or none of those who applied are eligible, then they can get the clearance letter to apply for the foreign worker they call it labor quota, I think. So then once that's available, then they can go through the process. Um, so I think a lot of people tend to want to get foreign workers because it's just more stable compared to a local employee, unfortunately. But also because most foreign employees are willing to work for less pay than what the local employees want to work for. Um, but on foreign workers, I've noticed the foreign workers tend to like work like almost most of their lives in Brunei. So is there a limit to how long they can extend their stay in Brunei, or as long as they renew or they renew the visa or something?
Yeah, I think I don't I don't believe there's any prescribed limit to the length of a foreign worker being able to stay in Brunei. In the sense that there are fixed periods, but in the sense that that fixed period can be potentially renewed, um, uh, not indefinitely. I think maybe there may be a cap with the age of retirement, but certainly they can be renewed up to that point.
Mm.
And there's no fixed number of periods, let's say, that they can work in Brunei. But it's all subject to the approval of the Ministry of.
Mm. On this not I'm remembering that previously that someone can just try to get a foreign employee themselves, but is it still the case, or do people require to go through an employment agency in order to do so?
Oh, I'm not too familiar with this. I think that the use of foreign agencies is one of convenience as opposed to a requirement. I'm
Okay,
not sure. So,
because
is anyone else able to comment on this?
Yeah, I think you're right there, AJ. I mean, for us, for example, um, we had used agents before, but like you said, I think that's more of a convenience rather than a requirement.
okay,
Uh,
so a company themselves, they can go through the process of hiring the worker instead of going through an employment agency.
I mean, the employment agency helps you find, I suppose they help you find
Mm,
the employee because they would have their contacts in
mm,
in whatever country that you're looking in.
mm.
But in terms of doing the process here, I think you can do that yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, it's
Yeah,
as you
yeah, I'm
said.
pretty sure that's right. Speaking, I mean, of being familiar with, for example, hires in the legal industry, I know that some firms they do hire foreign lawyers, and that's usually dealt with directly. They don't go through any kind of agent for that. So I think it's more of a question of
Mm,
whether it's convenient for you to look for a foreign staff, depending on the position that you're looking for,
mm.
and the country that you're searching.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay. So I put the link here for any labor laws. There's resources that anyone can check. But of course, if need more information, can hire a lawyer. Yeah. I copy pasted this from the labor laws. So, as mentioned, in most cases, a contract is required. But I noticed, like small companies, they rarely provide a contract for their employees. I think mostly because most of the local employees don't last long, so they don't bother with creating a contract for them. What's your take on this, and what do you recommend for people to do in their contracts?
Right. Just touching on what I said earlier, even if you don't have a written contract with your employer, if your job falls within the scope of the Employment Order 2009, then the Employment Order 2009 sets out the terms of your employment with the employer.
Okay, so
Yeah. So even
automatic.
if that's not captured in a separate document, even if it's not
Okay.
captured in a separate document, your employment will be circumscribed to the sections of the employment order. Because I think the purpose of the employment order is to provide protection to employees of exactly the in the exact circumstance that you described, which are sort of maybe in more or less stable professions, or those with higher turnover, or just sort of lower income positions, which most employers don't think that it is worth the time to draft an agreement for. So the employment order captures a wide scope, a wide range of these professions.
Okay.
So you don't really have any negotiate. I mean, you could potentially negotiate with your employer for certain terms, but in most instances, the basics are covered by the Employment Order 2009. So if you were looking for that sort of if you were in that sort of job market, you would probably want to start there. But I'm not sure how much of the employment order I understand. It really depends. I think this is a very sort of really depends on the job that you're looking for, the business that you're applying to. So there's no simple answer to this question. Really. Type of work as well.
Okay. So okay. Just checking on the chat. So there's no questions. I think we can move on. We have less than half an hour left. I think we'll try to zoom through as much as we can. So halal process. So we were also invited previously from Bagian Halal of the religious affairs, and they usually give a briefing on this. But the information can be found on the website, and the process in general it depends on the business. So there's four main ones. So halal certificate for the site, the location, the kitchen, or the restaurant. Halal cert for the person who's doing the slaughtering. Obtain halal meat supply license. This is for importing, and halal mark for products to have the halal logo on their product. Usually it's applied to the bagian halal or the halal foods control division, and they have tests whether it's oral or written, and in some cases there's the on-site inspection. So whether it's a home-based business, if you want to get halal certificate, they will inspect your house. Well, not the house, the kitchen where the business happens. I think what's interesting is it's recommended to have a separate kitchen for business and for home use. Um, Also, another on site is the halal supplier, which I think one of the main reasons why we haven't had a lot of our normal imported goods, such as ayamas, with our sausages or the nuggets. But thankfully, because of those restrictions, it's not really restriction. It's mostly because I think the halal certificate has expired. So in order for them to continue, the local officers have to go overseas to check, and then check the site, approve it, then the company can import. But I've noticed those products have leaked into Brunei market at some point during this COVID times, but only for a short time. Any of you are familiar with the halal process that you can add? Oh, maybe I should have gotten a Sharia lawyer as well. So that they could
Yeah, I don't know whether Sharia lawyers have been asked to help with halal applications as well.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I have I have some knowledge, but only because I have family who are in the restaurant
I guess that's good enough.
business. No, it's really not. I mean, I wouldn't add much. I wouldn't have much to add except that I think that I don't know if other people know this, but to get the halal certification, they check every single ingredient that you use. So if at any point you change one or two ingredients, maybe through no fault of your own, it might be because it's not in the market anymore. And even though it's halal certified somewhere else, you need to
Apply again.
notify them and then get a new
Okay,
certificate
wow.
based on the change of ingredient. Yeah. So I thought that, I mean, that was my main takeaway, and I think that's very interesting. That's something that I feel people should watch out for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think I like to share as well. It's not in these slides, because I don't think they put it on the website. But to my knowledge, is certain small companies, they can get a exemption letter, or the Malay is the surat pengecualian. So certain small businesses who do from home can apply, and they can get an exemption letter, and that's good enough for them to sell to the convenience stores in Brunei. Again, I guess that's a behind the scenes information. Okay, so we'll not just spend on that. No question on halal. Okay, moving on. So almost at the end, trading across borders. So the information can be obtained from the Mofi website as well. Again, most of these are copy pasted from there. I think most of us are familiar with buying products online. So usually when we order, we receive a letter that is arrived, and then we pick it up. But when we pick it up, there are custom inspections, and if we have to pay certain fees, taxes, then we'll pay them before we can take them. But I think when it's for businesses, when it's in large quantities, it's recommended for them to register at the customs and go through the online process of for applying for the import or export of the items. Um, any of you can add more on that on the process of importing or exporting products in Brunei?
I think you've got it there. I think there's another slide which you'll explain how there's certain items or certain types of products that may require extra approval from other departments in addition to the import license.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so
that's step 2, apply permit.
Yeah, that's one the step to the permit for certain items. So yeah, I'll just carry on so that we can make the time. So import duty and excise. So I attended the briefing on this one. So they were explaining why the taxes change. What I found confusing was the word import and excise. But when I asked about it, so apparently excise does include import duties or taxes, and it also includes manufacturing. So if manufacturing, if you locally manufactured in Brunei, then it's also imposed a tax. So I don't know if any company in Brunei has been imposed any taxes for manufacturing these items in Brunei. If they do, but that's the main changes in the taxes. So from import, they just move on to excise, and some of them have been increased, and some of them have been decreased. So in the case of car tires and car parts, they have in general reduced because according to JPD, they wanted to reduce the incidences of well, the road car accidents because some people use cheap items or second-hand items which doesn't last long anyway, so which will cause accidents. And then there's also on industry, so it's a reduction from 5 to 2.5%, again to promote industry in Brunei. Clothing and fur products reduced, and oops, too fast. And interesting, some items, mostly luxury items. I think I noticed there's an increase. So, for example, in here, handbags, Skin. So I'm guessing it's the luxury items, the branded items. They've increased the tax to 5%. And then hair oils and methods for hairdressing from 30% reduced to 5%. That one I don't think they explain why they reduce it. Maybe some a lot of people have hair problems, so that needs some addressing. Games, interestingly, was highlighted was Dart, the Dart game. Don't know why that's highlighted there, but understandably, it's video games and consoles like the PS4 and the Xbox. Oh, sorry, PS5, the PS and the Xbox have increased in tax, so from 5% to 20%. But I think that caused more people to play mobile phone games rather than console games. So again, luxury items increased from 0 to 15. Food products. So items with high sugar content. This was from MOH. They also brief why they did this. They want to reduce the amount of sugary products sold in Brunei. So they charge $4 per deciliter, which explains why a lot of drinks cost more than it used to. And then this was a bit of viral a while back when they introduced this, the MSG from 0% tax to 30% tax. Personally, I think it's just a small amount, but I guess for a restaurant who maybe who maybe purchase like $10 worth now have to pay $13, so that's significantly a lot. So there was a small complaint I remember when this came out. And electrical goods. I remember computer goods were zero, but now they charge a tax of 5%. Mobile phones increased from 5 to 10. And then restricted goods. Interesting, yeah. They outline the taxes for restricted goods. So which technically means we have a provision for the importing of these goods, but I think we have yet to see anyone getting the proper permits for these items, which I'll share later, where people can try to apply for the permits. And then, of course, looking at the taxes, I can see why people don't want to apply the permit and pay the taxes. That's like 50 cents per stick. I don't know if any of you are smokers, so I don't know how many sticks are in one box. So that's what I'm guessing 10. So automatically 10 sticks is already five. If it's 10 pieces, then it's already $5. And watches increase 10% and so on. So these are just items that we have to be aware of when we're importing them. There are fees, and then there's also some tax exemptions, especially during COVID. So there's a few tax exemptions for HSE items, so like sanitizers, soaps, and the test kits, and that's on the taxes. Curious if you guys are familiar with if people don't pay the taxes that's imposed, is there any penalties or what can people do in order for them not to be penalized for not paying the shipping taxes?
Well, generally, I think these taxes are levied when the goods are brought into the country. So the only way that you don't pay the taxes is if you smuggled the items in. Um, and there is, I mean, it's a criminal penalty. There's a criminal offense for not paying import and excise duties when they're required. Okay, then the various legislations prescribe where and at what point are the duties required to be paid. But for the vast majority of the goods which the duties are levied on, they're usually levied at the point of import. So when they arrive in the country, you're under an obligation to declare them to the various customs officials, and then the customs officials will charge you. I think a common example that most people will be familiar with is with online shopping. You know, when you get goods come in through the mail processing center, or like the main mail processing center or the airport. There's a customs booth right next to where you pick up your parcel, and you have to go straight there and show them what you bought. So that
So unlikely to bypass that. But I remember previously when the borders were open, there's definitely a few cases where when people are asked, do you have anything to declare? Most people will say no. So I think that's usually the point of entry for it. In fact, I remember a news article. I think it was the company was Lara Corp. They were caught importing mobile phones through the border, but they didn't declare them. So I don't remember what was the penalty for that, but I think it was good. It was great enough that they closed down their shop not long afterwards. So I think that's a point of weakness
Yeah,
that yeah.
yeah. You're under an obligation to declare.
Okay. So let's move on to permits for import controlled items. So these are again also available on the Trading Across Borders website. So people can actually apply for specific goods to be imported or exported. So through these departments, and these are the contact numbers and the emails. Although to my experience, most government phones sometimes may not answer, or may take a while before they answer, and then the emails sometimes are full, so they bounce. So I don't know if any of these are still working, but these are the lists that's available from the website. So as mentioned earlier, Noor was mentioning about foods. When you import, you do involve Ministry of Health, according to here. Also the bagian halal, not just the customs and export, but if it's related to agriculture, then agriculture as well. Interestingly, I see here firearms, explosive firecrackers. I think the only company in Brunei that has the permit for firearms is RBTS. But I don't know if there's any companies who have the permits for firecrackers. That's something that we have been missing for the last few years in Brunei. We don't have any firecrackers, but apparently we can import them, or at least hire an importing transport agency to import them. I think in order for them to play those firecrackers, also needs a permit from the police as well. I think in the last Chinese New Year, there were a few people who played fireworks or firecrackers. But again, they had permits. I find this interesting. Rice is controlled supply and states for department. I think this because it's a highly subsidized item. So we can just simply sell off or export subsidized item. Mentioned this before, any vehicles from the Land Transport Department, alcoholic beverages. So this is an interesting item to apply for permits. To my knowledge, though, there's probably one company that does sell alcoholic beverages. Any of you know of the company I'm talking about? Well, the one I've seen is Nafi in Syria, but apparently they only sell to the army officers who are allowed to purchase them. So apparently, if someone else wants to get the permit, it's from Moffat, PMO, and Customs and Excise. I'm not sure how easy it is for them to get the permit, but obviously not everyone sells alcoholic beverages. Anything to do with technology, using ATI, anything to do with plants, agriculture, fishes, fisheries, timber, forestry, medicines, herbals and cosmetics, we mentioned before, Ministry of Health, health foods, soft drinks and snacks, again, MOH, tobacco products. We saw the taxes earlier for tobacco products. So this is where we can get the permit, if at all. But to my knowledge, in the last few years, ever since the tobacco order, we haven't had any legal importers of tobacco products. There's chemicals, industrial chemicals usually, and the PMO, mineral water, I guess that's under industry. I don't know if these are updated. Because I thought industry was absorbed by MOFI, but maybe not all industrial uh, agencies were absorbed by MOFI. Cement under PMO, anything to do with His Majesty royalties under Royal Custom and Tradition, historical antiques under museum, and gases that defeat the ozone layer under Justry and MOH. So again, these are the lists of permits that can be applied. Again, the information can be obtained from tradingacrossborders.gov.bn. Any of you have anything to add on the trading across borders? Ooh, okay. We have a delayed question I'm seeing. What makes a company charitable or to be recognized as so thinking of starting a non-profit? So this is more on a question on registration. So I think we can address it now. So what makes a company charitable or recognized as a non-profit? Any one of you want to answer?
I'm not 100% certain if there's any any laws or regulations governing charities and nonprofits in Brunei. But I mean, to answer the question as to what makes a business a nonprofit, I think generally means that there are no profits distributed to the owners or the managers of the company. I mean, I think you're allowed, for example, fair wages, to pay for staff and expenses, but your accounts should not have any sort of profit taking by any individuals. To answer the question simply, yeah. But I don't know if there's any specific regulations governing non-profit companies in Brunei. Not something I've come across.
In our case, LiveWIRE is a non-profit, but it is registered as a Sendirian Berhad. So our revenue is mostly from BSP sponsorship. And then because we're Sendirian Berhad, they can see where we spend on our salaries, on our rentals, on our activities. But none of that, any surpluses, we just carry forward to the next year, if any. But in general, yeah, we don't really declare that we are non-profit. We just say we are non-profit. But I think some non-profits they don't register as a sendirian or a sole proprietor. Some of them register as an association. So that's under Registrar of Societies. But then I'm not sure if any associations conduct business. Um, I know they provide services, but I don't know if they conduct businesses. Any other information on non-profits? Okay, I guess not. Okay, I hope that answers Ali Tebian's question. So yeah, just announce that you're non-profit, and of course you're really not taking any profits. Okay, and almost at the end, legal matters in marketing. So in general, appoint a registered advertising company, and they will submit the application to ABCI, and they will compile comments from relevant agencies, and once approved, once paid and approved, then can put on the signage. So my understanding is you can't just put on signages everywhere. You need to get proper permission, proper permits. So example signboards, like there's a requirement for Jawi to be double the height of the Roman characters. And signages on the road or banners or billboards that actually have to be have to obtain the proper permits. I think the previous to ABCI was the town and country planning. They took action on anyone who didn't have a proper permit. But I still see some people putting, cheap banners on the side of the road without any permit. I'm not sure how enforceable this is. Any comments on marketing and the legal considerations in marketing?
I suppose depends what kind of marketing you're doing, what your content is. There could be, there's potential for lots of issues. There are IP. There could be IP issues involved when you do your marketing. Um, what else?
Maybe decency, public decency
Mm,
issues as well.
Oh,
Yeah, definitely. Some. I mean, I think this. I think in the penal code, there are some provisions relating to things that you can publicize,
okay.
certain materials and things like that. Yeah.
Okay,
oh, I
that
think
sounds
that's under
general.
the Broadcasting Act.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Broadcasting something.
well,
Right.
yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's also an advertising code of practice under that as well. So there's certain things that you can't have in advertisements that are broadcasted. So I mean, so this is separate from like if you have posters,
Okay,
but I guess
that's still
that's a
relevant.
part of
Yeah,
marketing as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, and then cover on that on broadcasting on radio or TV. But yeah, I think because not a lot of people watch Brunei TV, except for this month, because almost everyone's watching for the Azan Maghrib. So that's why we also see a lot of advertising before the Sungkai. So yeah, thanks for that. So I should probably include that information next time on the Broadcasting Act and is it decency? Uh, so making sure the content is appropriate for public consumption. Okay. So I think that's actually it. We can leave for the question and answers. Well, think yeah, that's the end of the presentation and any general discussions. So anything that you guys want to add before we close the stream and the session? Okay, also waiting. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I don't know. I suppose I don't really have anything to add, but I suppose we should take this opportunity to thank you, Bobby, for hosting this session and inviting the Law Society to be a part of it. I think it's important that we have regular discussions and collaborations like this, so people can be more familiar with the legal considerations and issues that might come up,
Mm.
because I think it can be overlooked sometimes, most of the time.
Yes, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
Okay. Thank you very much for your collaboration and for your input. I'm very sure in the future when we have more workshops, that will probably invite you as well, or at least the Law Society, for representative to share more on the legal considerations in starting a business. But for now, I will usually just share what I know. But if anything that I don't know, I will usually refer to someone more expert like you guys. So hopefully we can stay in touch. Okay, so there's no
Thank you
other
very much.
questions. Just checking with IT, with tech guys. Okay, fine. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution, for your time, especially during this fasting month. Kasian lah, the ones who are fasting. I noticed Nor was like her lips were dry. So, so again, thank you very much. Okay,
Thank
goodbye.
you. See you. Bye. Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, stream ending and screen. Okay, stop streaming. Okay.